Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Stevens, a Keep Indiana Learning Innovation Coach, and super excited to be able to continue a conversation about making in the classroom with my favorite troublemaker, Mr. Paul Shircliff from Bloomington, Indiana. Welcome, Paul. Kindly share with our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Amy. Thanks for having me. Well, I was a classroom teacher for about 25 years, working mostly with physics and math. And I left the classroom in order to try and help educators do more maker-based learning, more STEM integration. And so for the past 3 years, I've been out of the IU School of Education, and I run a mobile makerspace that goes to K-12 schools in South Central Indiana and helps teachers do things differently.
That's fantastic. And, Paul and I recently were able to be connected through Indiana University about a year ago. And I actually left a grade level classroom to provide more of an opportunity for kids to be able to grow, to fail, to find strength in that making new connections, that mindset, and so forth. And so today, our topic about being a maker in the classroom revolves around real world problem solving. And, any unit, any classroom, how that the connection with being a maker and then uncovering, oh my gosh, like this is a problem you could probably solve out in the real world, whether it be today or preparing our students for jobs that may not exist today, but will in the proverbial tomorrow, right?
Yeah, we don't know what jobs they're going to have, in 20 years, what jobs are going to be available. But we do know the skills that industry and world leaders are saying are going to be necessary. And all the stuff that we develop through maker centered learning and STEM learning are the skills: creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, curiosity, computer skills, AI skills. All this stuff is going to be necessary for jobs, for these kids. And problem solving is a great thing to do. And I had somebody that a teacher's friend that started, brought a 3D printer in, and his caveat to the students were, find a problem to solve in the building, and then we can 3D print something to try and solve that problem. And so there you go. It can get more real than their building.
I love that.
I love curriculum. It talks about, like, let's solve problems in the community. Go out in the community and find issues that need solving. Let's create a solution for them. And it's going to include some kind of maker, because maker includes so many different things. It could just include, the maker could just literally be create an infographic about it. That's
absolutely. It's that idea of seeing challenges as an opportunity, and whether it be just, having a morning like maybe I had today where it was just like nothing seemed to go the way as planned. And it's like there were two different ways I could have attacked that in myself and my mindset. Like, oh my gosh, like I give up. I'm done. I'm not doing this day. Or, okay, didn't see that coming. Here's a way that I might be able to solve this. Okay. And even in sometimes, oh my gosh, Paul, I'm sure you've had this too, where you're like, okay, tried that solution, still not going the way I planned, and it's just having that perseverance. And so when we do these in our classrooms, again, no matter if you've got like the fancy STEM lab or, whatever grade level you might be in, we really are teaching kids to grow that mindset and to really find strength in seeing challenges, seeing failures, mistakes as opportunities for growth, right?
Recovering from them, developing resiliency.
Yeah.
Again, those are not academic content standards, but those are skills that our kids need to thrive in the world. We just don't want our kids to survive in the world. We want them to thrive, and we don't know what jobs they're going to have, because the jobs are changing constantly, but we know the skills that they're going to need.
Absolutely. One of the curriculums that I get to work with is set up where they teach you a little bit of content, like in activity 1, And then you get a little bit more content in activity 2, and you get a little bit more in activity 3. And then together you do a project. And a lot of times when you look at the science, the social studies, the ELA, the math classroom, I would venture to say that most curriculum writers have the content structured like that. Like, you teach a little bit, you build, and then we're going to do a project together. But oftentimes the level up comes from this final component that I get to do with students, which is a real world problem. And so they take everything that they've learned, they take that that guided practice that we call the project, and they apply it using their connections and their skills and their design thinking capabilities to solve this real world problem, much like what you were just saying about the 3D printer. Like, find a problem, go solve it. I've taught you this, I've taught you this, I've taught you this. Now we've done this together, now go. And that can be a bit radical, I feel like, for some of our listeners, because maybe some barriers, I don't know, share with me what you think. Might be time, might be the state test, might be,
Yep. How my kids do on the state test.
Yeah.
Is always, I have so many that say, we can't do any projects until April after the state test. We don't have time to do it. We have to get all this content in. I'm like, they're not learning the content. You need to get these projects going the whole year, and they will actually learn the content through doing the projects. And what I like about the problem-based learning aspect, and the last decade in the classroom, I did not do so much lecture and notes and then we'll do something. It was more, here's a little background idea and here's some of the thoughts and what do you know about this? And kids know stuff. They know stuff about physics, they know stuff about math, they know some, and then it was like, okay, well, here's what we gotta create and build. And so then it became just in time learning. They needed to know how to do something to do it then. Because they always get, when am I ever going to use this? When am I ever going to need this? But if it's on a problem base, it's like, I've got to learn how to build a bridge because we want to build a walking bridge that goes across this river in our community because it's such a beautiful place. And so we got, okay, let's learn how to build a bridge now. But if you had done a lesson about how to build a bridge, they would have put up with it.
Sure.
But now that they need to know it to do something they're interested in, just in time learning is such a great way. And it's hard because not every kid or every group is going to need to learn the same thing.
Yeah.
At that time. So now you've got, 7 different groups. You're trying to teach them 7 different things because they're doing different, even it's like doing the same part. Like when I did circuits and literally just had wires and batteries and bulbs and switches and da-da-da-da. Well, this kid did great with series, but this kid had no idea about parallel, but this kid was good on parallel, but no idea about series. So I was like, teach it. I need to learn series. Okay, let's teach you series. I need to learn parallel. Well, I'll teach it. Well, I need to learn it. That just in time is hard, but it's better learning because they need it.
And I'm also hearing you say that in the real world, just like you and I are doing, you oftentimes make connections with others and you share your connections to make it that much better, right? Like this conversation that we're having today is that much better because it could just be me saying, hi, I'm Amy from Keep Indiana Learning. I'm going to talk to you about being a maker in the makerspace. But now that I get Paul and your experience and all the connections that you have with being a maker in the makerspace, this conversation instantly is leveled up. And that's like, whether it's in a project, whether it's, teaching students how to communicate and work together and, and not only those my turn, your turn manners, but let's try that idea. I'm not sure that it'll work. I've thought of something similar to that, but we can give it a try. I love this because that's going to wash out for years in the real world.
Expand your network and teach them. The bigger your network is, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but you need to network to help you with ideas, to help you learn stuff. And that's what should be the good aspect of social media. But too often the bad aspect of social media dominates everybody. I loved Twitter in the beginning, and so did a lot of educators because we would have weekly chats,
Sure.
hour-long chats that everybody knew. You get on at this time, and here's the hashtag, and you follow that hashtag, and you're having questions or just open chats. And
Yeah, with anyone in the world.
There was all around the world.
Yeah.
And so the network was so big and so much sharing. It was awesome, the growth that was happening. And then things happened at Twitter, and just everything just got screwed and was just not there anymore. Like we missed that networking. We're still trying to do it, but it's just not happening as well. So teaching these kids to build a network. Years ago, I was I was following things along on social media, and there was the sharks from, I forget where, but there was like the shark lady that did was like a Skype a scientist kind of thing. And I just saw that she was just on doing something live. And then I went to the library and was come back to the library, saw one of my students, they were in another class. I'm like, what's the matter? He said, I got to do this report on sharks. It's like, I could get you in touch with the shark lady in the Caribbean who's doing, and he's like, nah. I'm like, I could have given you a first person expert, and you didn't want, because it was, I don't know why, because it was different, because it'd be too hard. I don't know.
I love that you just said that. We did a project with our fourth graders last year, and they were learning about in their English language arts class, they were learning about persuasive writing and trying to get, to persuade somebody to do something. So one of my students wrote about climate change and, trying to persuade people to maybe change their lifestyle a little bit to impact the environment, which could impact climate change. And I didn't know about this because I'm not the classroom teacher, but I am the STEM teacher. And so the kiddo was like still churning on it. And he was just like, I just wish that I could know more so that I could come across a little bit better in my argument, is what I was hearing him say. And I was like, hey, my cousin actually represents the country of Micronesia at global climate meetings. We should call her. And like you said, some kiddos would be like, no, that's too much. Now, it's like I did enough to get the grade and turn it in. But instead, this sweet fourth grader was like, what's the time change? Do I get to stay up past midnight? It was so funny. I was like, no, it's going to work the other way. It was hysterical. And so we ended up getting my cousin on the phone and talked for quite some time. And this project just like expanded. And so it was like the child wasn't afraid to do the hard work, to put in the extra time, to put in the effort. And that is, again, one of those things that we're talking about that, yes, that was more of a real world, opportunity project, but it's also developing real world skills. And I wanted to make sure we highlighted that today, because that persistence, that creativity, that just being curious is just, sometimes it's so beautiful and so natural and in the tiny humans. But as we grow, something along the way, I don't know what it is. I feel like sometimes it maybe fizzles, and I want to preserve that. I don't want that light to be extinguished.
So you mentioned the word curious, and I think curiosity is the most important word.
Yeah.
We always get people talking about, creativity, collaboration, communication, creative. Yes, those are awesome. None of those happen without curiosity. And we need to develop that curiosity, that culture of learning, that I want to learn stuff. You're wanting what happened to things. School happened to things.
Yeah.
Sir Ken Robinson has a TED Talk. Do schools kill creativity? And this
You're right.
Like 10, 15-year-old.
I forgot about that TED Talk. That is an excellent listen. Yes.
And it's like, yeah, because we as maker educators, we know all the different ways to make. We know what we did as kids, but then in the classroom, no, we're not going to make. We've got these worksheets, we've got these lessons, we've got these PowerPoints, we've got we kill the curiosity and creativity because it's hard to contain it. It's back to the learning is messy talk. When I've got 30 kids just going there, no, I want them here. I want to control them. And that's boring. But the curiosity, they're all exploring. And you can rein it in a little bit. You keep them in subjects, kind of, but it's having that culture learning, that curiosity, that's so important. But creativity. We killed it with schools, grades. When a fourth grader is already plotting how to get the right grade. Fourth grader.
Yeah, exactly.
What are the next 8 years going to be like? Yeah, and that's the thing. That's what we're trying to shift pedagogy here with maker education, where we bring the maker and the project to the forefront and the center of everything around it, and you give kids choice and agency and voice and and real world problems that they want to solve, projects that are based on problem solving or creation. You can do it in any. You can do making STEM in any curriculum. Like you mentioned English language. I'm going to work with an 8th grade language arts teacher. They're going to make gingerbread houses, but the students are going to be technical writers. They have to write the instructions on how to build a gingerbread house. So first they have to build a gingerbread house, and then they've got to do the writing. And so that's an easy English thing. I was with high school advanced English, and they were all studying. They all had different books to read. But they were studying creative writing, colorful writing.
Okay.
Similes and metaphors and So they had to mark those in their book. So when I came in, I just brought all the maker stuff and said, okay, you have to make a physical representation of one of your things. So if you mark bleeding heart, you need to make a physical bleeding heart. That's maker.
I love that.
Tied into English. Any book, and we have this saying, or at least I do. Every project has a book, and every book has a project. So there's no reason to never. Picture books. Bring them into the high school. We're doing this project about whatever. Let's bring a storybook in. Let's read. We did 6th grade, 5th grade English. They're reading a book. So I came in with all the maker stuff and said, you have to make something from the book and talk to us about why that's important in the story. So they had to talk about the story.
Oh, I love that.
But they got to make something, and they all made different things, different tools, different materials, the things that interested them. That's the great part about it. You find out their interests.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say.
You learn about your kids. We always talk about the most important thing is relationships and learning about your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that by worksheets. You do that by maker projects and sitting down with them and talking. Geometry class, we did quadrilaterals, but when we did quadrilaterals, they had to make a building that used every quadrilateral as a room in the building, and they had to duplicate squares and rectangles can be used once. But the building had to be something. It could be a rave, it could be a gaming center, it could be whatever. They had to make it something. So that lets you learn about them. The gamer made that, the musician made that, made a concert hall. The girl who shows horses, that I did not know she showed horses, made an equestrian center.
Oh my goodness.
And they had to explain to me, this was a rhombus because this and this.
Yes.
Awesome. But I didn't know she showed horses.
I don't know if I told you this, but my kiddo's geometry teacher, and this just happens to be geometry. That was the connection that set off in my brain. She overheard my daughter and some of her friends talking about HGTV. And she was like, let's build some tiny houses. And so they literally recreated some of these, like you were saying, like these angles and shapes that they were learning about in geometry, and they built tiny homes, tiny structures. It was amazing. Then they had to have a little theme song, and it was just really fun.
Yeah, you bring in the music,
you
bring in the artistry. You cross curricularize this so much. Back with tiny houses, I love the idea of tiny houses. I'd love to, build one, live one. I know some schools that actually build them and sell them. There's an English teacher, and I can't remember. I think it's Dan Ryder. They read Of Mice and Men. And
Okay.
so the project was design and build a prototype of a tiny house for the characters in Of Mice and Men. And you have to use parts from the book to explain why you've got that in the house.
I love that. And then to connect it to the real world, you could think of, just different experiences where maybe not necessarily a tiny house, but maybe something might be appropriate out in the real world. I know we found like a quick sort of, I'm a visual person. So I was thinking like, okay, if I'm talking to a group of teachers and they teach all different subjects and all different grade levels, like what might be some quick like go-to ideas? So I know we've talked in the ELA room, like, a prototype or, some kind of like an invention, but to take that another step, like, could that invention based upon a character, like, could that have an impact in today's world or maybe in the future world? I know in math, we talked about the tiny houses and the bridges. Well, could that, like you just said, like, could those actual physical structures be created and maybe a student run business or maybe sold to help, somebody in the community?
Build ramp for
Yes.
what was the saying going around now that why did we build stairs into every building? Why didn't we build ramps into every building? It would help. It would accommodate everybody. But no, we built stuff. So teaching kids how to build a ramp. Wait, Pythagorean theorem? Oh my gosh.
I know, right? Skipping down, PE was one that I thought was super neat because locally we've got an amazing city park, and there's been a couple of additions to the park over the past couple years. And one is a skate park, and it's like a little mini park inside of our park. And it's just phenomenal how it literally was generated from the ideas of students. And now it's not only a place for them to move and to, exercise, but it's a place for fellowship, and it's a place where they were able to apply some math skills. Yeah. There's even some
math skills, construction skills.
Yes. Some fitness stations that have been built throughout. And this is incredible. There's a dog park inside the park, and some students came up with, using their idea of like simple machines, how they could design and build some components to the dog park that maybe the dogs would like for agility. And so that just stemmed from PE class. And I was like, oh my God. Lee, you're using math, you're using construction, you're using, science. If you need to think about like what materials you would use that won't crack in the temperature and so forth.
Just make up a new game and make up the rules for the game.
Yes.
Write them down.
Yes.
And,
oh my gosh. Yes.
Simple as that. Now it can't be Calvin Ball. I don't know how many of you know Calvin Ball, but Calvin and Hobbes, there's a comic strip. Calvin's a little kid and he's got a pet.
I love it.
A pet tiger, and it's actually a stuffed tiger, but for Calvin, the tiger is alive, and that's Hobbes. And Calvin Ball is, we make the rules up as we go. And the rules constantly, this is now a reverse zone, and this is this zone. And so, yeah, you can't be Calvin Ball. You have to actually make rules up and stick to them.
I love that because Calvin and Hobbes is one of my favorite comics. So that's amazing. We just really encourage our listeners to think about, please, when you're writing a lesson, or when you're, maybe teaching a lesson that's been written either by a curriculum or by a grade level team, think about what you might need to connect that lesson to the real world. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, a creative craft or project. I mean, just some of these ideas that we were just talking about, do involve that maker mindset in the classroom, any grade level, any subject area. And really allowing students to see mistakes as part of that making process, and celebrating, the process as you progress through step by, that's kind of hard to say fast, celebrating that process as opposed to celebrating at the end when it's done. I just feel like when we approach teaching with that maker mindset, like we really are preparing students for life down the road, but also life today. And we're just helping them to never lose that sense of wonder, just to be capable problem solvers. And so I challenge our listeners to think to themselves as they are reflecting on what we've talked about today. In your classroom, what does being a maker mean? And how is the real world connected? Is the work that you're doing, just like Paul had said earlier, when am I going to need to know this? Or when am I going to apply this? How can it? And maybe involving the students in that conversation is part of you finishing that sentence.
Yeah, having the students part of the metacognition of what are we learning, why are we learning, how are we learning, where does this learning go?
Absolutely. And just any questions or anything about connecting it, the community is always willing, I know, to connect with schools. And sometimes once that connection happens, more comes from it. Maybe it's within volunteers or time or donations. But just regardless, always connect and be thinking about networking, be thinking about truly growing our students as those curious. I always think of the pigeon books. I'm just a curious bird, and just knowing that the world out there is very real. And as an educator, it's a true just gift to be able to build that resilience and that perseverance in students. And Paul, as always, I'm so grateful for your time and your maker mindset and just your most fabulous self. It's always so much fun being a troublemaker with you, and I just really appreciate you taking time to share with our listeners a little bit about connecting and absorbing that real world into the classroom.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We look forward to more conversations, and just truly thank you, listeners, for joining in. We wish you a wonderful day.